Good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's out there. I'll start with a bit on who I am, what I've done, how I got here, and why I'm here really, because I'm sure none of you know who on earth I am. So who am I? This is not an existential crisis. I am both a 20-something working middle-class white British woman on the south coast of England. I'm adventurous, I'm sporty, I'm a nature lover with way too many houseplants, but I don't think you can have too many, some may argue. I'm food loving, I love a nice glass of wine, and I absolutely adore good comedy podcasts. But I'm also really nerdy, was a massive teacher's pet when I was younger because it means you can get away with a lot more as a child. And I'm also dyslexic actually. But why am I here? So I've been invited here by Collins because I'm on the WISE Young Professionals board. You'll hear more about them later. And I'm going to share my journey into data science in a male-dominated environment. But what's a data scientist? A person who is better at statistics than any software engineer and better at software engineering than any statistician. In my opinion, we're half hacker, half analysts. We use data to build products and find insight. It's been referred to as both Columbus and Columbo, starry-eyed explorer and a skeptical detective. But what does my role actually entail? There's all the techie stuff and coding, but there's also lots of problem solving, stakeholder engagement, leadership and commercial savvy. Data scientist is quite a catch-all title. There's lots of flavors of data scientist, I like to say. And as a consultant data scientist, I get an opportunity to learn and experience many different flavors of data science. But the one I'd like to share with you today, and the majority of my role, is data governance, which includes data policy, management, structure, and organization, because it's usually considered quite a dull subject potentially, but it's all around us, is really important, and without it, data can't be used and exploited and conveyed in a meaningful way, because it's all around you. It controls the data people hold on you, from your medical data, your car insurance, tax office information on you, cookies on a website, your social media information, and all those online shopping accounts. Data governance is integral to data use. It's how it depicts how it's shared, stored, updated, and destroyed, and who gets to make those decisions. Also, what numeracy level are we expected to have when you click yes on a cookie on a website? How can we sign off to agree how our data is being used without understanding it? How should governments, companies, employers, and individuals act when it comes to your personal and private data? So I work with customers to help them understand what data governance is and how to implement it within their companies. But how on earth did I get here? So my route here was not straight, was not planned, and had lots of swerves along the way. I started at school, which I believe many of you are teachers, and I did love school. Might be through rose-tinted glasses, but I really did. I went to English state schools the whole time. I mixed schools apart from my secondary school, so from ages 11 to 16. And then I went to university. I didn't get into my first choice. I got into my second, but I'm very glad I did. The teaching there was brilliant. And I studied mathematics and graduated with a first class degree in maths. I then had some admin jobs because I graduated with no job lined up, no plan at all. Maths was a very catch-all subject for me, just something that I enjoyed. So I got an admin job and I did a summer placement at my dad's work actually, which helped me get the job that I have now as I moved to BMT as an engineering consultant. I was one of 2 consultant females in a company of 50 at the time, but now we've merged multiple times, we're a lot more mixed now. So I went from a company of 50 to merging with our sister companies and becoming a company of 100, and now there's over 500 of us in the area of BMT that I work in. I also did a little runaway. I went on a 3-month sabbatical partway through my career, about 2.5 years in, 3 years ago now, and absolutely loved that. I joined and learned about WISE Young Professionals Board. Again, you'll hear a little bit more about that later. And I changed departments as well. So I moved from our reliability consultants department and asset performance to our technology and innovation team as a business analyst. And got a promotion recently, and then also sidestepped within the same team to our data capability as a senior data scientist. What did I need to know to help me get this far? Obviously, education was really important. Without my maths degree and without my scientific skew in knowledge, I wouldn't have got where I am. So like I said, I went to English state schools all the way through my career education. I'm not sure, like I say, whether I look back with rose-tinted glasses, but I really did love learning. I had some brilliant friends. I was incredibly nerdy. I was a little bit bullied, but I am very tall and good at sport, so it didn't really work out for them. Also being at an all-girls school through my secondary, so ages 11 to 16 really helped. It was awkward enough as it was. Being at an all-girls school probably helped when it came to being interested in the sciences. But I definitely gravitated towards maths and science. Looking back now, I know that's partly because of my dyslexia, which I didn't know at the time. I only got diagnosed when I was at university. But dyslexia meant I avoided reading and writing as much as I could. It was always the last homework that I did. I was regularly reading questions wrong in exams. And it really meant that I'd developed a way to get around it. And a sign of a dyslexic is someone who's good at spotting patterns. So I read words like shapes rather than a word. So I get 2 words I always get confused with is April and July, because they've both got 2 ups and 1 down. Just a little aside there. But it's also a side effect. Well, you can notice a dyslexia from really bad handwriting, and I had atrocious handwriting because you try and hide all those A's and E's and make them look about the same so that someone can infer what that word actually is. But maths had short questions, didn't rely on spelling and grammar, and I was just good at it. I enjoyed it. So a logical step for me to continue it into my exams when I was 18 and then on to university. My choices were actually between drama and maths, which is a very odd choice to choose between for university, but maths felt like it was a lot more logical and a lot more of a stable career when it came out the other end. Gave me a few more options. And though I'm very glad that I did maths at university, I do wish I'd known more about science degrees and professions and had more of an informed choice when I was deciding what degree to go on later. I might have done economics, I might have done engineering, I don't know, but I didn't know much about those degrees or professions when I was younger. So I chose maths. I felt like it made sense to me. But it's not just school and the curriculum that educates you. I was also influenced by all sorts of other things, and I'll get onto my role models in a minute. But as you can tell, probably because I don't like reading, or because I'm dyslexic, it meant that I was really fussy when it came to books. I had to really love the book because it took me such a slow time to read anything, and it's actually the only time my parents were taken into school because I was reading aloud so slowly. The teacher was worried about me. But like I said, I was a goody two-shoes. I didn't have any other reasons for them to come in. But it was definitely Harry Potter and the Harry Potter books that helped me with that. That I was only a few years younger than the characters as they were coming out. So it just is magical and interesting, and everyone was reading it, and it's something that you wanted to keep up with. And I just really love those books. So the frustration of reading slowly was worth it for them. But then later in secondary school, I also read the Noughts and Crosses book by Marilyn Blackman. I really remember my English teacher, because I had the same English teacher for the whole 5 years, which is unusual. And we got on very well. She knew that I was clever and logical, but struggled when it came to English. and she would let me borrow books from the bookshelf and recommend them for me and give me no time restraints on bringing them back, which was brilliant because I'd have been much more under pressure. But I remember reading it and just loving it and wanting to read more because of the ideas within it. I'd never thought about thinking about races the other way around to the norm in the UK, and it was just a really gripping story. I also, well, because I wasn't a massive consumer of books, I did a lot of listening and watching and playing instead to learn. So I listened to a lot of BBC Radio 4 shows, and now listen to a lot of podcasts to learn and to laugh a lot of the time as well. I remember Sunday nights about 6 o'clock before bed listening to Radio 4 with my dad and my sister on there were like science adventure shows on the radio, and I loved those. Those really engaged me. But I also, it was the playing and watching and tinkering. So like lots of science adventure places that you go at school and with family, like the National Science Centre in London, where I could watch and play and learn, particularly about physics, with toys and stuff that you didn't realise that you were learning so much from. And like I say, Radio 4 is still an influence, but now I also really love TED Talks. The little short videos that they do, the automated ones, are really interesting, but also the inspiring speakers at events as well. Really love them. Which brings me on to people and role models. As you may have guessed, my love for Harry Potter means that through school, Hermione Granger, though she is a character, a role model doesn't have to be a real person. It can be a character, it can be imaginary, but just because it's in your head, Harry, doesn't mean it's not real. She was super nerdy and a boss, and because she was just a few years older in those books to me, she was paving a way that I felt that I could follow. She's really clever and sensible and brave and would save the day a lot of the time with that cleverness. Those boys would have been dead by the end of the first book if it wasn't for her. So I really just loved her as a character. And then Terry Pratchett, who writes a lot of books and is probably someone later in life, in secondary school, like late teen years, but he also writes some books for younger children that were just fanciful and silly, but very insightful and fun. And I realised a really good insight into logical thinking and questioning the world around us, those kinds of aspects. And then more recent role models, Dr. Hannah Fry, so the one top left. She's a mathematician who does shows, a lot of which are on the BBC, teaching maths to adults and teenagers and children about the applications of maths in the real world. And some of them are just, I was so surprised on what maths is really part of, including a show on dating algorithms, which was really funny. And then also, just because I love New Zealand, and Jacinda Ardern as the Prime Minister of New Zealand, she is just a woman in power who uses logic and kindness to create a wonderful country and help build them. And as you can probably tell, the more recent role models are women carving their paths in men's world, which brings me to today. So today, as a senior data scientist in government consultancy, I am surrounded by men, unsurprisingly. I'm regularly the only woman in the room, in the team, in the call, but I am incredibly proud of the impact I've been able to have on my team and people around me. It was just a couple of days ago, one of the senior technical leads on a project came to me and said, "Oh, have you seen these job roles being advertised by a customer? I think you should probably have a word with them. I saw them and thought of you," because the language that they used was very male gendered, and they used a lot of bullet points and expectations and required abilities, and I know that means that women are more put off applying for those roles and less confident people will apply for them. But I just really love that I know that I've had an impact on my team in that way, because he said I wouldn't have thought of it if I didn't know you. But I'm very lucky to be surrounded by male allies, particularly our managing director, who's incredibly passionate about increasing diversity in our company. But I've not always been this fortunate. I know many other women who are trying to succeed on their own in much more toxic environments. Hence my passion for equality in STEM, because diversity is proven to increase company and employee success, which is how I came to be involved with WISE. So WISE is an independent community interest company. They work with their growing network of corporate and academic members to reach a goal of 30% of women in core STEM. So core STEM as depicted by ONS, the Office of National Statistics within the UK, and this is 30% women in core STEM in the UK. So they support, inspire and enable members to deliver impact into their organisation at every stage in their career. So one of their straplines is from classroom to boardrooms. They do lots of outreach to younger people, like My Skills, My Life, where you can see women in different roles in STEM and learn about what they do. But also they help their companies who are members to increase the diversity and the appeal of their companies to a more broader gender set. And I found out about them because my company is a member of WISE, and I heard that the WISE Young Professional Board exists, a group of women who work together, women and men now, who work together to help WISE increase their impact and inspire the next generation of STEM applied, and now I'm chair. So we're a diverse group of individuals with experience in a wide range of STEM industries who communicate openly, honestly and constructively. By drawing on the Young Professionals Board, WISE stay relevant to their members' needs and interests, as well as increase their impact on professionals in STEM. By using our diverse experience and relatable communications, we continually work to inspire, engage and advocate for the next generation of STEM. And some of these have been with HarperCollins. So the Tarabins book series. As the Young Professionals Board, we source the real life role models who are at the back of each Tarabins book. So Tara goes off and finds out about a different career, and we go around the world via email and find women who've done those roles, so that people who read those books, children who read those books, can see real life women in those roles and what the day-to-day life of them actually is. We run all sorts of projects, including reverse mentoring. We have blogs that come out. We run lots of social media accounts, but we also attend events. We do conference sessions and have board meetings to help influence WISE and improve. But something that you as teachers might find really interesting is that we do a competition as well every year that we aim at school-aged children, and we keep them on our website. So though the prizes aren't out anymore for these ones, there will be a new one this year. Last year was our most successful so far. It was a code-breaking challenge for ages 7 to 14. But you could probably go younger as well, or potentially older too. And it was, I describe it as like an escape room, if you've heard of those. The children would solve puzzles on a piece of paper and wrap things around stuff to find out letters to break a code that was supposed to set off a launch or a rocket. And we had loads of engagement and some really cool prizes for that, actually, some like STEM build kits for 5 who were randomly picked out of a hat. So work isn't all, well, life isn't all work, and Young Professionals Board for me. I've been really lucky over the few years, and these are just kind of some of the extra bits to add a bit of flavour to my career that I thought you might find interesting. So I was able to go to Indonesia with work and do a charity give back out there with the company, where we went and helped local children, and because the company had sponsored a bridge that was connecting a village in rural Indonesia to the local town, that meant that their 5-hour commute turned into half an hour, so they could sell more of their produce, they could get to the hospitals and doctors quickly, and children could get to school much faster, or could get an education past infancy. So we went and helped the school children and had played and taught them how to brush their teeth and wash their hands properly. It was really, really interesting, really, really exciting. I've also been to Singapore with work on a training course called BMT Consulting Women, where we're trying to encourage and empower women within the company to learn more about leadership so that we end up with more women in leadership for others to follow. And then we also do fun things like Christmas dues and sailing regattas every summer. But with WISE, I've done things like visit Rolls-Royce and see how a jet engine is taken apart and put back together and cleaned. I've been in parts of panels on conferences for WISE and attended their awards evening as well, which is always a good laugh. On my sabbatical, you may have noticed my head popping out of a hobbit hole, and I did a bit of a skydive as well, which was great. Those 3 months off, I gained so much confidence, and it was a really, really fun break. It made me really work out where I wanted to go, and that's just before I moved department and changed to become a data scientist. So I was very glad I did that. And then also stuff like half marathons and other smaller events that we do with work was just a bit of fun, really. And here's our social media for the WISE Young Professionals Board. If you wanted to get in touch with us or see what else we're up to, Alex will be doing a talk this afternoon, for GMT. So please get in touch. Please follow us on the social medias, and please, thank you very much for listening to me. If you find anything that I've said interesting, get in touch or ask some questions now, and welcome them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hazel. That was absolutely wonderful, and I just want to say a huge thank you for our audience for asking some really interesting questions, which I'll get to in a bit. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will be sending everyone who attended the webinar recording and the certificate of attendance for you to refer back to and share with your colleagues. However, if you do miss the email, you will be able to find the recording on the webinar website. If I could just trouble you, Hazel, to flick on to the next slide. We have dropped our contact details here, so please do contact us at the email shown on the slide here if you have any queries or if you'd like to know more about the Tara and Dani Binns series as part of Collins Big Cat. And now I guess we'll go on to the Q&A, for which I'm delighted to invite Lizzie Catford, our Collins primary publisher. And just to, I guess, introduce you to our audience, Lizzie, Hazel spoke about fictional role models, and I wondered if you could give us a bit of an introduction to Tara and Dani Binns and how they fit into the Big Cat reading scheme, as well as how they serve as fictional role models for young readers.
Yeah, absolutely. So we published the Tara Binns books, and they are a series of fiction titles about a young girl who has a magic dressing up box, and what she does is she lifts the lid of her dressing up box and it gives her a costume each time, and then she's transported off into an adventure where she experiences a different career in each book, and they're all STEM careers. So it might be as a doctor or as a pilot or as a paleontologist or as an engineer, and she has all of these experiences and they're fantastic stories where it's a sort of adventure story where she has to solve a problem and save the day, but it sort of enables her to explore the attributes and the skills needed for each of those careers. And they were written by our author, Lisa Rajan, and Lisa came to HarperCollins and to Collins with the idea. And Lisa is a scientist by background and a very passionate scientist. And she wrote the books and she was inspired to do it because she had a daughter. She'd had 2 sons and then she had a daughter. And when she came to reading the stories that she'd read with her sons with her daughter, she suddenly became very aware that all the protagonists were male characters when it was a STEM career. And she just felt like there weren't the books out there to give role models and to raise aspirations for girls around STEM careers. So she kind of thought, the books aren't out there, I will write them myself. So she created the Tara character, and we just absolutely loved them when we met Lisa. And like I said, she's she sort of really conveys her passion and her enthusiasm for STEM and the importance for girls to be there in those careers. And we met with her and we really we really sort of fell in love with the books, to be honest with you, and what they were doing, how they were sort of busting those gender stereotypes. And there was something that really resonated when I was listening to Hazel's talk just now, when she was saying that she, you know, absolutely loved school, but she didn't really have any conversations around careers, and she would have liked to have thought more about careers sort of younger in a way. And that really resonated with me because I was very similar, and I have a very different background that I've sort of gone through a sort of arts route, but similarly I absolutely love school, but I never really had lots of conversations or thought much about careers when I was at school. And it was sort of something we touched upon when I was at secondary school, aged around 16, but that was it. And it was really just a toe in the water. And I think having books out there that, you know, enable conversations around careers, enable children to start to think through ideas and explore different ideas and see role models out there. And I think that's really important through literature, because books really are a way of sort of broadening horizons and showing a sort of window onto a broader world, aren't they? And having a really positive role model in Tara, experiencing all these different careers and sort of showcasing them to children, I think is such a positive really.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I was interning at college a little while ago and getting to work on the Tarabins books then, and this was before we introduced Dani Binns. So the fact that we opened up that whole area to even younger readers, I think was really, really important and such a good thing for us to do. One of the questions that has popped up twice now in the Q&A is ideas or methods or activities around that you might suggest for students with dyslexia. I guess if I could ask you, Hazel, to answer this one first based on your personal experience, and then Lizzie, if you might have any suggestions from a pedagogical point of view in terms of resources as well, that'd be really good to know.
So for me, it was all audio. Like I loved listening to things instead and watching things. And I felt like there was a bit of a taboo for watching TV and watching movies and learning that way. But I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed seeing things. I'm a kinetic learner for sure, and doing things as well. So I used to love sciences where I could actually do something rather than write things down. And when it came to dyslexia, and having to get around the issues like having presentations that are very wordy or having to read a lot of text all at once. I found a way around that myself, but my teachers also were very good at not putting pressure on me to get things done quickly, because they knew that I was bright, but they knew that I struggled with writing. So if I was reading things aloud, I was so scared. That was because then people could see how slow I was and how much I struggled with it. So if ever I was in that situation, so because I loved drama, something that helped me a lot was doing drama and having a script beforehand that I've in my own time been able to read, get the idea of it, and then when I'm reading it again aloud, I know the general gist and I'm able to fill in words much easier than if I'm going at it blind. Definitely, I really, yeah. Having that foresight and that time beforehand when it does come to word heavy lessons really helped me.
And I think obviously dyslexia is a really complex area as well, and it's hard to make generalist statements around it, because I think obviously all children are individual. I think that's the thing. Everybody knows every child's individual, all children, including dyslexic children. I think it's sort of understanding the individual child and meeting their needs. I think that was really interesting what Hazel was saying around audiobooks, and I think we've seen a lot more audiobooks becoming available and a lot more children enjoying them in general. And actually there's at the moment there's sort of no difference really in terms of a child's understanding or engagement with a book. There's been research into this between them listening to the book and experiencing that as an audiobook, you know, in terms of developing their skills and their comprehension skills and their understanding as them reading it. So I think that's a really good idea to, you know, encourage, because we know that children engaging with literature, enjoying it, having that pleasure around literature, how it can broaden horizons, how books can help children access other areas of the curriculum. And I think having some audiobooks available could be a really positive step.
Absolutely, thank you so much. One of the questions that I would personally like to ask is, someone has asked about the idea of kind of working in a predominantly male environment, and I guess the realities of a job within the STEM industry, but also I guess flipping it on its head, just the differences in working with the opposite gender that you can have, impacts that you can have when it comes to our workplaces in general. So Hazel, can I throw that to you first?
Yeah, go for it. It's a hard one, because other than if I hadn't have gone to an all-girls school, I would have been a massive tomboy in inverted commas. I was quite rough. I was really into sports. I liked all the male-dominated industry subjects, and therefore going into a male-dominated environment, I wasn't particularly intimidated. And I definitely found that with my gaining in confidence, I call people out on it, but I've worked out how to call people out. And by it, I mean just assumptions. So if I go into a room and people will go, oh, do you mind going and getting the cups of tea? And I was like, oh, one of these men could go and get a cup of tea. How lovely of them. Oh, don't you mind that for me? And questioning language when people assume that managers or people in senior positions are men. I like to specifically use the word they. I really like that word. It means that there's no assumption on gender when it comes to people in roles of power. Having not worked in a female-dominated environment, I'm not quite sure how different it is. And like I say, I'm really lucky to be surrounded by men who are very open and interested to learn more. And if anything, letting them know that I'm there if they want to ask that question, and no question's a stupid question. Then those times are, when they come to me, it's just brilliant. I really love that they do, because I can help them when they've got questions that are quite similar to how they can help someone in a similar situation. But no, you tend to, as a woman in male-dominated environment, you find other women, and you end up making allies with them first and foremost, because you feel safer automatically with someone that looks and acts more like you. And I've definitely done that. I definitely end up being closer with women in my department straight off, and finding them and talking to them and making them feel welcome. But I've been very lucky, to be honest.
Great, thank you.
Do you want me to comment as well, Jan?
Yes, please, if you could.
Yeah. So
publishing's a bit different.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm the reverse in that publishing is a female-dominated industry, but I think there's still work to do, and I'm lucky to work for an organisation that's very committed to sort of diversity, inclusivity, and challenging any stereotyping around anything. And the company's been very committed to running courses around sort of women in leadership and bringing in external speakers, and I've had some very inspiring people talk, and I think that's really good. It's that importance of role models, I think, and raising that aspiration. And I think as a publisher we have an important role in that as well, in terms of we work as my background is as an editor, and so working very closely with words and challenging the words you use and sort of gender assumptions. So it is firefighter, it's not fireman, and all of those things, and just making sure from a young age that children, there are no barriers being erected or assumptions being placed on them around anything. So it's something, even though I work in sort of a reverse industry, these are still issues that I think we have to consider and sort of deal with, and make sure that we are leveling that playing field the whole time.
I've thought something else to that actually as well. So I also found, because I'm a feminist with a capital F, and particularly after my sabbatical, I became a lot more confident in challenging people, that I tend to go, when I move departments, I tend to go quite high up and ask for a conversation with a senior manager, who's usually a man, to get them on side and make them more vocal, because usually they're already on side but they don't know how to be vocal. And making senior management more vocal means that the conversation is much more prevalent, and any barriers that you might come up against as a woman in a male-dominated environment you know that you have top level support, and you know you have encouragement for a lot of your colleagues, and people will call others out even if you don't have to. So that it takes time, but getting senior management on side has definitely helped me.
Yeah, I think I can absolutely agree. It's so important to have a top-down approach when it comes to affecting positive change within a company, a school, an industry, just any group of people really. And actually, someone in the chat box has given an example that despite more than half the students in their class being girls, they were considering going into jobs like teaching rather than working in large companies. And they've stressed that it's important for everyone to work harder in order to get more women into science and engineering. And echoing quite a few questions actually, does WISE consider international partnerships with high schools in Northern Cyprus, for example? So Hazel, I guess that one's one for you.
WISE are a UK-based organisation. They work with companies and academic institutions within the UK. And they support them if they have branches around the rest of the world in rolling that out elsewhere. There's all sorts of free resources on the website that anyone around the world can use as well. But they don't partner with organisations outside of the UK specifically, no.
Great, thank you. And I guess if you will be sharing this recordings, you'll be able to see all the resources that Hazel is referring to in your own time, and please do feel free to share it with your colleagues as well. There's a question about how to get young professional women involved in similar organisations to WISE, I guess, where they are. Hazel, can I throw that one to you first?
Yeah, it'll depend on whereabouts they are in their career at the moment, but what I would look to do if I didn't know, so I know about it because my company's a member of WISE. We went to a WISE Awards event because I was one of very few young professional women to go and sit at the table that we sponsored at this event. My managing director went, and then 11 other young women in my company who were the 11 other young women in my company at the time. But we had such a fun night. But the speakers were so engaging, and that's where I found out about the Young Professionals Board. There's also so many different awards and organisations and institutes within STEM, so depending on their STEM industry or their STEM profession. So for example, there's WES, which is Women in Engineering. They have an early careers board for women. And there's all sorts of other organisations in other areas within STEM who have their diversity area and angle that you can always get involved in. There's usually a diversity award within award ceremonies, so looking to try and get like the apprenticeship or the Rising Star Awards in those areas really increases your visibility as a young professional, but also increases others' interest in you to have examples and use to get onto young professionals boards around the world.
Wonderful, thank you. I guess I'll shift focus a little now. We've spoken about lots of things, including how to inspire young women in roles in their careers, but I guess in terms of going back to what you said, Lizzie, about making sure that there are no barriers within their schooling itself, what do you think are some of the key things that teachers watching this webinar can do to try and create a really open and honest discussion about the kinds of roles that women can do and the kinds of roles that men can do as well, more generally?
I think to be honest with you, is having those discussions, isn't it? And starting a sort of conversation around careers potentially earlier. And it is, I guess it starts with small steps in a way, and it is things like looking at your library and seeing what kinds of books you have, and if you have girls doing these jobs within those books. And with the Tarabins books, we worked with the Institute of Physics on a campaign they were running around gender action, because it's well documented that by 16 there are you know, already girls are making choices in terms of their you know, their GCSEs or their A levels, or their qualifications more broadly around not taking those STEM qualifications that will lead on to STEM careers. So you've got to sort of shift it down, because by secondary school, that those sort of mindsets have already been set. So it's got to really come down younger, to primary, to younger children, and encouraging them, and, you know, engaging people in science and talking about science with enthusiasm, and teachers, I guess, being confident around that to some extent, because and this is talking about the UK, but I think quite often teachers at primary level within the UK, because they're generalists and it's, you know, they have to work across every single subject, they can sometimes be less confident in science if they've got a literacy background. But it's about, I guess it's about not being scared of it, and not worrying if you don't know the answer and that kind of thing, but finding out together with the children, encouraging those attributes about research and challenging evidence and looking at it and having enthusiasm around it, around talking about careers, showcasing them, and having within your literature and within your sort of artwork that you have around the school, girls doing those things, and it being there as a part of the fabric, really. So you're challenging that from the offset, so because it seems that those mindsets are being set quite early, and by secondary school already, girls aren't choosing those subjects that will enable them to go on and have STEM careers.
Great, thank you so much. One of the questions I think would be really interesting to hear from both of you are the key attributes or qualities of success for someone within your field. Now, you come from very different backgrounds and you do very different jobs, but I imagine that there are certain things that you will end up agreeing on, or maybe not. So Lizzie, could I get you to start on that?
In terms of publishing, I think this is probably true of all careers to some extent. You have to have a sort of you have to be willing to sort of carry on in a way, and I don't know how to sort of describe that feeling, but like sometimes in every job you meet stresses and things go wrong, and it's not how you imagine certain things. Like when you're working on a book, something can go wrong with it, or you know, you have to deal with different personalities on it, and it's just that willingness, I think, to not over worry, not get anxious and shut down, but think, how can we work through these problems, and having that sort of positive mindset around it all. And I think it's really, that's the core attribute really, probably in any career. I think it's that open mindset to learning, to knowing that you won't know everything when you're doing it, but you can find out, you can work with colleagues, and there's so much expertise, and there's so, you know, I'm so lucky to work with such talented colleagues who share so much. And you know, I've gone up through different roles within the company, learning so much from the people around me, and I think it's having that open mindset. And for publishing in particular, I guess you just have to love books at the end of the day, because that's what we're producing and creating, and that love will carry you through anything, really. It's and you know, it is such a privilege to work in this industry, to be honest with you, to work with the authors that I do, and to combine that sort of creative element of what makes a great story, what you know, how do we bring that to life through illustration, how do we put all that together, and then also the sort of the marketing and the financial side as well, of making every book sort of work. So yeah, no, there's a lot really, and it's, I guess, synthesizing all of that. But I think the core thing is really just to have that open mindset, and to know that things will go wrong in any career. There will be setbacks, there will be problems that you have to think through, and it's not always clear how to resolve things, but you always do.
Great, thank you. That was really inspiring, actually, and I agree with everything that you said as someone else who works in publishing. Hazel, what about you?
So no, I completely agree with Lizzie on that. One thing particularly saying is learning from problems and learning from mistakes. And when you were talking earlier about what teaching to do with young children to try and remove barriers, you mentioned about researching things together, and I think that's so important, is learning how to research and learning how to learn and to improve. Because when you're younger, you think everyone knows what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing, really. We're all just very good at Googling the right sentence for the job that we've got to find the right information. So that's what I think STEM's so evolving, and you're constantly learning and you're constantly aware, and being able to problem solve and being able to do it well and with research and backing is what really helps in a STEM career, for sure. It's being able to know how to look up results and know how to question things as well, being curious, curiosity, being logic, and also being approachable. But that's in all careers, but specifically in consulting, which is where I am as a data scientist. So we need to be able to be approachable to our customers. We need to be able to talk about difficult subjects well. So our communication skills are really important, even if our technical skills are just as important as communication, for sure. But curiosity, I'd pinpoint it down to that if there was one thing.
Well, that is a great note to wrap up on. But before we go, I am curious to know if there is one thing you would like our audience to take away from this webinar as teachers, as people who will inspire the next generation of young men and women in their careers, in their education and their learning. What would you like to say to them? The floor is yours. Lizzie, can I start with you?
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, the fact that everybody is here today to engage in this debate and to consider these issues shows such a level of commitment, to be honest with you. And I think it's such an important role you have as teachers. Everybody remembers their teachers, and both Hazel and I have sort of spoken today about what we did at school and how much we loved school and the importance of that for us. And it's such a significant role you play in young people's lives, and engaging with these issues, knowing that you have a role to play, I think, in inspiring young women to take different careers, to not have a closed mindset and to shut down young and think STEM isn't for me. But to keep raising their aspirations, to keep showing what's possible, because anything is really, and I think that's such a key thing.
Yeah, I completely agree with Lizzie, and I would put it down to feeling like you can belong in an industry or in a subject, in a school, in a role. And being able to belong is such a difficult thing to quantify, but seeing role models, having inclusive language, all these kinds of things make people feel like they can belong, and having those role models as well, whether real, historical or fictional, can really help give visibility to those areas, to help particularly young girls feel like they belong in industries, and young boys in industries that are not typical for their gender, in inverted commas. But also something to take away, just because I love it. Maths is really cool. It's really interesting. I think it's great. I think so many people are put off it when they're younger for all sorts of different reasons. But it's numerical literacy is and will continue being really important in adult life. One of the complaints from school, friends at school in maths class was, but what's the point? Like, how's it going to help me? Being numerically literate is incredibly helpful, because numbers are thrown at you daily, every time you look at your phone, every time you read the news, every time a company's trying to sell you something. How to look after your own money as an adult, being aware and questioning, being curious, and feeling like you can belong in those areas, and we're so all up in one, means that you can go about life much better, and having that from a really young age is really, really helpful, sets you in a good direction in life.
Well, that was a wonderful note to end on. Thank you both to our wonderful speakers and to our audience. As I said, we'll be in touch with the recording and the certificate of participation in the next few days, but please do join us for the second webinar with Alex at 4 p.m. GMT. And I wish you the very best day, and thank you again for joining us. Thank you both. Take care.
Thank you.